Conversation is going round. People talking about the girls come to town. Fresh as a summer breeze, she'll take you by surprise.
Good morning and welcome to another fabulous episode of Freshwaves. We have a terrific show lined up today, but before we start, we have to give a big shout out to Mr. Ivan Harris for all he does behind the scenes here at the show, and to our one and only technical producer, Mr. Jason Rumball. Drum roll, please.
Good morning, Brent.
Morning, Jay. How you doing back there?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
That's good.
We have another shout out going to Reese's Market and Bakery for all the lovely muffins that they provide the station with on Wednesday mornings. They've been supporting this show for over 10 years and we're really thankful for all that they do. And guess what, Jay? Christmas baking starts next week at Reese's, and that's 5758 Main Street. Can't wait.
It's hard to believe that Christmas is less than a month away now.
Shh.
Yeah.
Don't tell people that.
No.
Okay.
But they should know it.
I know. You know, the 25th of December happens on the 25th of December every year.
Every year. Yeah, it's a guarantee.
And every year it takes me by surprise. Luanne Donahoe is joining us in the studio this morning. Luanne, I have known actually for 20 years now, and we lost touch for a while, and then I saw on Facebook that some woman named Luanne Donahoe was having a book signing, and I thought, can't be. She's not an author. She has like some normal day job, 9 to 5. Oh my gosh, it is Luanne, and she's writing novels. Wow. So it was so nice to connect with Luanne again, and then I phoned and asked her if she'd like to be on the show. She said yes, and here we are today. Luanne is a mother, an author, and the widow of a first responder. Luanne, welcome to Fresh Waves.
Thank you, Brenda, for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, it's all about you. There's very few days in the year that you can say, oh, this day is all for me. Today is all for you.
Thank you.
You've had an incredible journey, a journey that most first responders dread, and you've lived it. Your husband,
Yes.
Paul, passed away in the line of duty as a firefighter. He was a fire captain in Markham.
Yes.
How long was he on the force?
25 years.
25 years.
Yes. He started off as a volunteer in Unionville, and then he was hired full-time, and he did both for a while until they disbanded the volunteer service. And yeah, so he quite loved it. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter how everything ended up, he wouldn't have changed a thing. He loved it.
I think I've heard a lot from a lot of firefighters. I have a friend who's
It's
a
a
firefighter.
passion.
And he said that he feels he's just retired, and he says after 35 years he feels like he never worked a day in his life. Not that he didn't work, because they worked darn hard.
Yeah.
It's just that he loved what he did so much.
Yeah, it's a passion. And, they're very driven to do their jobs and do it well. And Paul was definitely one of those people. He loved it. It's interesting because this is jumping ahead a little bit, but the day we were going through some medical tests and that with him, and he was kind of given news that wasn't the most optimistic. And I said to him, how do you feel about this? And now, would you have still been a firefighter had you known what the outcome would have been? And he said, absolutely, without a doubt. So there wasn't even a moment of hesitation. So he loved it.
Wow. Well, there's something to be said for that, because it can be a really nasty job, You go to situations as a first responder where you don't really want to be there, but to know that you can help would be wonderful. How was it for you all those years being the wife, and you actually liked Paul?
Yeah, go figure.
And you... Every day he walks out the door and you don't know what that day is going to bring. I mean, that happens to all of us.
Yeah.
We could all be in the lady that was doing her laundry and someone drove through the front of her house and she was killed. You never know what's going to happen to you in a day. But as a first responder, the chances are a little higher than the average Joe that you're going to be in the face of danger.
Yeah, as a wife, I always just put it in the back of my mind. I never really, because you can't live your life that way. You can't live your life fearing that could happen. So you just have to, they go, and you just don't think about it really. There were times where if you knew there was a quite a large working fire. I remember way back when they were still building in the 14th and McCowan area, and there was but I think there was a fire of 100 houses or more.
Wow.
And they were being built and they were working on them. And it was a big working fire. And so it was kind of then that I started thinking, oh, well, something could happen, but you can't go there. You just have to keep carrying on and take each day as it comes.
Okay. Because you did that for a lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of years.
Now, did you know that he was
Yeah.
going to be a firefighter when you first met him?
He was a volunteer
was?
firefighter.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he got on full time shortly after we met. He was actually a mechanic at back in the day, Conda Motors. And it's when we met. So my mother worked there as well in the office, and Paul was in the, obviously, as a mechanic. And so he ended up fixing my car one day, and my mother said, oh, you should go out with him. And I go, he knows where I am. He can call, right? And so anyway, my dad was a local politician, Bud Bonner, and he was running an election, and Paul offered to put signs up for him. And so he came to the house one night, and we met, and it was like, that was it. Every day, saw each other every day after that. It took him till the night of the election to ask me out, but it did happen, and the rest is history.
The rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
And you both come from crazy big families.
Yes. Paul was one of 6 kids, and I was one of 5. We were the houses where we literally lived less than a block away from each other, and we didn't meet till I think I was 21. Almost 22 when we met. And but we were the houses where all the kids congregated, right? Yeah. So
Well, kids
it's fun.
attract kids, don't they?
Yeah.
When you have
Yeah.
that many.
Yeah,
There's friends
yeah.
of friends of friends of friends.
And I mean, we moved to we always lived in Markham technically, because we were in Thornhill at Yonge and 7 at one point, but we moved to actual Markham, McCowan and 7 in 1964. So we're a long time Markham.
Markham people.
Yeah.
Markhamites. And
Yeah.
then you ended up living in Ballantrae.
Stouffville, actually, right at in Bloomington, at Bloomington and Ninth Line.
Yeah.
Which it's a great little spot there, and the people there are wonderful.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
It's a really nice little community tucked away up there.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, you've got a large family. He's got a large family. Are there any other first responders in your family?
A lot of police.
Really?
There's a lot of police in my family. My brother is a retired staff sergeant. Paul's brother is retired sergeant. I have a brother-in-law who is also with York Region detective. Wow. I had a sister-in-law who was a detective with York Region as well. I have a nephew who is he was originally with Toronto Police. He's now with Durham. And then I had another nephew who is military police.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've got a lot. And I now have a nephew who is with OPP.
A lot of first responders. And you have to have a special personality to do that, I think. You know, a lot of people say, little boys when they're babies, I'm going to be a firefighter when I grow up, or I'm going to be a policeman.
Yeah.
But very, relatively speaking, very few of them end up following those kinds of things. So it's a special personality to be a first responder. And Paul had that personality. He was truly a firefighter.
Yes, yeah. And you have to be a team player. It's a family. I mean, you're with each other long periods of time through intense situations. You have to be able to trust. And I found my key thing whenever he changed crews was I needed to meet the crew just for my own self. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do it formally or anything, but whenever I met them, then I felt comfortable because then I knew who he was going into a fire with. And that, I think that's key. And you get to know the guys and the girls, actually, the women, and who were all very capable as well. And so for me, that gave me a sense of comfort. Mm-hmm. And I could just relax once, I knew he was okay. I know who he's with.
He's safe. And
and they're looking out for each other. Exactly. And that's what they do. And they do it even off duty. Like, they're just a great group, especially in Markham. And a lot of the guys are retiring now. They're at that age. And but the camaraderie is still there. And they had an event not that long ago. And it was like they were just seeing each other the day before.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
There's very few jobs where you can create that kind of community that is a lasting community.
Yeah, and I found too, like things would happen. Like one time I ran out of gas, and then they all start kidding me and joking around it. Oh, Luanne, do you need some gas? And with Markham Fair, when Paul was president in 2006, they did the front page article about it, and the only thing that they got wrong that year, Paul laughed, was my name, and they put my name in as Luanne. And Paul said, I'm sorry, I did spell it for them. And I started getting phone calls from firefighters. Yeah, I want to talk to Paul's other wife, Luanne. So you have to have a sense of humor. You have to go with the flow.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a husband who's a first responder. And how does it work in a marriage where they're under a lot of pressure? And if it's not a fire, it's a car accident, and they're going out and people have been hurt, and there's kids involved, and Paul was such a lover of kids and children and family. Did you find that he brought that home, or was he able to leave it at work? Because it's a tough thing to leave it at work.
It is tough, and he could leave it at work. I can only recall one time where he came home one night and he was quiet, really quiet, and I just said, oh, so what happened at work? And he didn't talk about it a lot in detail, but it was a family's car was T-boned, and there was a little girl. She was about 5, and she was hurt. And Paul went in the ambulance with her to the hospital, and that was the only time that it really affected him. He says it's hard when it's kids, really hard when it's kids, right? But that was almost the only time. Like, he pretty much could leave it at work. He was pretty good about that, and he just went with the flow. He also understood that that's part of the job. You have to do it. But it's not an easy part of the job, and not everybody can do that, right? And just leave it at work.
Okay, would you be able to tell us a little bit about the series of events that led to Paul's passing?
Yeah, he had a occupational disease, and he was diagnosed in 2002. And so there was a 5-year period there after he was diagnosed where he was in and out of hospital many times, and they can't really pinpoint where it started or began. I mean, when you're in the service that long, and protection gets better and better, protection is better now than it ever was when he first got on, right? And
was this condition caused by smoke inhalation?
No, they're not 100% sure, right? It could be a bit of that. It could be the chemicals. There's one particular fire which was a chemical fire back in the day. The first truck in Paul was on it, and I say coincidentally, but I don't really think that coincidentally. Every one of the firefighters on there. So Paul developed occupational disease and passed away. Another gentleman developed an occupational disease, and he's since passed away. Another one developed brain cancer and died. Another one is currently fighting cancer, and the 5th one was a rookie and quite young, and he's healthy, thank goodness. But so you question, it's they can't necessarily pinpoint it, but you question whether that was really because
the source of it.
Yeah, at the start of it, right? So so he ended up in and out of hospital 8 times in that 5-year period. He had 2 emergency neurosurgeries during that time. Every time he was in ICU, he would go septic before they'd even figure out what was going on with him. And he was intubated one time for 10 days. So he had a really rough go, and it really weakened his body. Like, it was really tough. So, and then the last 6 months, we changed his treatment plan, and he seemed to do really well. He was thriving really well. But then when the night that he did die, he wasn't well at all. And I said he needed to go to the hospital, but he insisted that I take our son to a swimming lesson and he'll be fine and come back. And I came back, but unfortunately he had collapsed. And it was shortly after that he died of a massive pulmonary embolism, which was a side effect, and as a result of the cancer he had and the chemo treatments and whatnot. So, yeah. So it wasn't an easy night, obviously.
No.
We had a lot of support, instantly. Like, we lived in Bloomington. I mean, we didn't even belong to the church 3 doors down, and the pastor was there that night. can we help you? And, you have fire, you have police, you have ambulance. People know Paul. It was difficult for them. The paramedic in particular said it was difficult because she actually knew him. And then the police were trying to get a hold of my brother because he was York Region at the time. So, there's a whole chain of events that are happening. I worked at Markham Stouffville Hospital at the time in the executive office. I had been in a board meeting that particular morning, and the doctor attending at the Emerge that night, we had been in the meeting together that morning. And so I saw her 2 weeks later, and she said it was very, very difficult for her because it became personal. And she said it was, even beyond reason. She said, we have to keep trying. And they're going, but he's gone, right? But she said, Luanne, we did keep trying. I just had to know when I walked back in that quiet room to see you that
you did everything
we did everything we could for you. And so, it you don't realize how much it affects everybody else around you too, right? All the first responders. So as you say, you've got the Emerge physician who's dealing with that, and the paramedics and the fire and the police, and everybody's having.
And they all know each other through working together over the years. They end up on the same sites of accidents and fires and all the rest of it.
Yeah. So it didn't end well for Paul. There's a lot of firefighters that don't develop anything, and they live long lives, and but it's part of the job, and they know that. They know that.
They do. Well, you're a brave woman. I remember that time well. Our boys met when they were in nursery school, and Paul was just starting to get ill. And I remember being at the school and Eddie saying that Josh was feeling sad because his dad was in the hospital and he was sick. And you trying to juggle the hospital time and picking up Josh and doing all the things that you have to do. And life goes on.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard. And it was a long time that Paul was sick. It wasn't just overnight.
Yeah, it was 5 years. Yeah. And we had a lot of family support, which was great, a lot of friends. And so we didn't do it alone. But it's not easy. And it's, you talk to any first responder widow, and you say, oh, you're so strong. And they're going to say, yeah, no. I don't think so. We're thrown into a situation where you have to be strong. You're thrown into a situation. Yeah, you have no choice. So you have to rise above, especially if you have children. You have to go that next step, and you have to get up in the morning, and you have to deal with your own personal grief later, even though you should be dealing with it now. I should have dealt with it sooner, but you have to deal with your children's grief, and you have to. And we had one child. I know many widows who have 4, and they're trying to, deal with all that.
Kids.
Yeah. And then you're dealing with the house, and you're dealing with, I was working full time. Well, I had to quit because I had to deal with everything else that was going on, because especially with first responders, you've got memorials you're going to. So I went to 4 memorials within a 2-week period within that first year. So, you've got...
I saw a picture of you in Ottawa.
Yeah, Canadian Fallen Firefighters. They do a memorial every year. International Association of Firefighters do it in Colorado Springs. And then there's Ontario Professional Firefighters and in Toronto, and at the time the Premier of Ontario did the same. So you have all that, and so that's an emotional roller coaster you're dealing with, and they take it very, very seriously. These memorials, and in Colorado, I noticed it especially because they were very particular. They're not even allowed to touch a drop of alcohol the night before. They make sure every name is pronounced correctly. They go through that whole thing. They say you be right on time to the second, or you will be replaced. Not that you have done anything, but they are to the second through that whole thing. And there's thousands of people there, and it's a huge thing. But every single one of them, every memorial, they take it very seriously, and it's an honor. It's an honor for these first responders to get their name on that wall. And you don't want their name on the wall
ever,
But I'm telling you, if they die in the line of duty, they deserve to have their name on that wall.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a little break. It's hard to stop this conversation because it's bringing up a whole bunch of things again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But you know what? It's good to talk about it because honestly, I have found talking about it helps other widows and widowers.
They have to.
And so it was great because I made that connection with others. And we had other fallen firefighters in Markham. Mm-hmm. And so I would reach out to the widows as much as I possibly could to just to connect. I was the first. Paul was the first. So I was lost. I didn't know who to turn to, what to do. Like, you're overwhelmed by all the information that's passed on to you, regardless of the support that you get. And it's something that I think it's important to talk about, as difficult as it is, because the other widows and widowers need to know they're not alone, right? Yeah. And they need to know that they've got someone there that they can turn to, even if it's a simple question or an email, and even if I just send an email to someone and say, you know, you don't have to respond, just know I'm here when you're ready. That's all that matters, right? Yeah.
Well, after our break, we're going to be making a phone call to your friend Anna, who is also a first responder widow.
Yes.
Her husband was a police officer.
Yes, in Ottawa.
So we'll be making that call as soon as we get back from this little break. You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. We have Luanne Donahoe in the studio with us this morning, and we will be back right after this, so stay tuned.